Dealer Tech Tuesdays is brought to you by VTech Dealer IT, guaranteeing your dealership premier reliability, stability, and customer support. Transform your Tuesdays into a powerhouse of growth. Contact us at www.vtechdealerit.com. Tracy Kawa.
Hi, John.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. I'm glad we finally were able to do this.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah, we've been talking about this for, a long time.
Yeah, I love your setup.
Thank you. So, Tracy, you've been, I would say, a magical ingredient in our organization for a very long time. I think, so to give the 30,000-foot view of what you do, and I think there's magic in between that happens when you understand people and understand your team members, and I think you have a really unique approach of doing that. I like to call you the Wendy Rhodes of VTech, the performance manager, coach, go into the head and fix some things and reorganize some stuff, which I think is very powerful. But tell me in your words, kind of big picture, what you do.
Well, first of all, John, thank you for those compliments. That's really an honor. And second of all, thank you for, allowing me to work with your team all these years. It's been fabulous. I guess I would have to say that the 30,000-foot view, well, I'll start by saying that I'm a non-designated behavioral scientist, right? I have always watched people, observed behavior, observed emotional and social intelligence, observed interactions, mediated between people, even down to watching the psychology of boxing and the psychology of sports, right? So having said that, with this love of people and love of people watching and interaction, I guess I developed an assessment tool that I thought would help people, that would bring out the best in them, show them their options. Most of us view ourselves in a box. We don't go beyond that box.
Yeah. We don't look ourselves as a box bumping into other boxes.
Right. Right. We
in
don't
a warehouse.
Right. We don't bump up that box.
Yeah.
Right. We sometimes have a limited scope and vision and view of who we are as professionals, and we don't see that higher vision of ourselves of what we can be.
Yeah, that enablement of creating, and I know this is such a buzzword, but creating a safe place where people can grow to become the best version of themselves. I hate using that word because it has so many implications about a safe space that we're nerfing the world around people. But I think it's, when you do, and your assessment is like an hour long, you do a comprehensive assessment of multifaceted functions of who a person is, right?
Well, it takes them 15 minutes to take it.
Yeah.
But to walk through it with me, I like to spend an hour so that I'm explaining in that they understand every single, like you said, facet and every single module that it talks about.
Which is, somebody was like, how does she know? So that portion was powerful, it's like, how does she know? And like, just in such a, I've done several of them, and it evolves a little bit, but not a lot, Yeah. And depending on the responsibilities that I have in the organization, I used to be the COO of the company, now I'm the CEO of the company, and just, I think it's a great leap to do the assessment in those different positions. But man, there was a couple of team members that were like, how does she know? And I'm like, it's spot on. It's this spot on assessment that takes a very, very short period of time to do. And then it gives you these insights of carrots versus sticks versus areas of competency, areas of conflict where they're in conflict with their values. It's like mine had effectiveness and fun. I was like, I always see that blot. There's this little blot on it that if it has spikes on it, it's like your fun portion is in conflict with your effectiveness portion. And I'm like, man, I talk about effectiveness on a regular basis.
Yeah.
But I have this, conflict with fun. It's like I like to have fun. I like to create a fun working environment where people can be comfortable to do that, but also effective. And, sometimes those things are in conflict.
That's so interesting because I think in general, or I know in general, that we do not have the language that we need to define our own values. So the assessment gives us the language.
That's really, yeah, I think that's very accurate. It's like it gives you, I think more than the language, the framework.
Yes.
Because it is the language and the containers of the frameworks that talk on each one, right? And it says your culture is similar to this leader, right? And it's like your company culture is similar to this company, and you fit in an organization that is in a hybrid or entrepreneurial style. And, in the dealership space, we talk about seasons of the dealership a lot.
Okay.
What season is the dealership in? And there's very marked seasons. And the marked season is like, you recently acquired this dealership and it was, for lack of a better term, a shit show, right?
Okay.
Because usually don't buy, unless you're a public company, you usually don't buy a great operation. You usually buy something that
something you can turn around.
Yeah, exactly. Like an HGTV kind of dealership. And, you need certain people and certain personality types for that. Very commando, crawling through the mud, and it's very brash, and there's a certain style for that, and that's a season, right? And then there's a season of growth where you're establishing processes and really creating kind of the marathon portion of it, and then there's the fine tuning, and there are very distinct differences between those, and I think your assessment does such a good job of where do the employees fall into their style, into that. And organization.
And what you're describing, John, are the stages of growth of a company, because you're right. Each company has a certain stage of growth. It could be, from a startup all the way through a large corporation, and there are also stages in between.
Yeah.
So that was a really good summation, actually. Yeah. Like, you really get it.
Yeah. I hope after 7 years, I think at 7 or 8 years. We're looking at this. That
at least.
Yeah, it's really been incredible. So tell me a little bit about how your background. Like, how did you get into this? Like, how? And I know you're extraordinarily passionate about figuring people out, but how did you come to this?
I think I've always been passionate about figuring people out. When I moved down here in 1993, I moved here with my ex-husband, and we opened up an orthodontic practice.
Okay.
And his specialty clearly was being an orthodontist, and my specialty was community relations, hiring, training people. And I actually carved out each administrative role, put somebody in that role, took a step back, carved out the next role, took a step back, put somebody in there, took a step back, until I finally took a step all the way out of the office. But during that time, I realized that I do have a passion for training people. But it's funny, because it wasn't until years later when I took my own, KBAT assessment, that I found out that one of my highest skill sets, two, marketing and also training, HR and training. And then it all clicked. I'm like, that's why I was so successful in that role. Because I did go on to try other roles that I wasn't so successful at. And we all have that, right? Yeah. Like, where we try and we, But so I guess to continue the journey there, after I stepped out of the office, I did try my hand at a few different things. And then I started working with busy professionals who didn't have the time to get to all the network meetings and to schmooze and to do all the things that they needed to do. So having had that experience of building the practice, working hand in hand with the orthodontist, I knew how to network people. So it was during that time that I realized that clients were also coming to me for different needs. And I'm a process person. I need to know where to start. And if everybody's coming to me with different needs, I need to figure out one portal of entry. So again, during that time, it was when I came across this assessment, this behavioral scientist, and I said, this is an incredible product. However, it's not being used currently in the coaching space, I'm noticing, and I'd love to work with you to develop this tool into a coaching tool. And that's essentially what we did. We spent 6 months fine-tuning what I needed to be in the assessment, and then the rest is history.
Wow.
Oh, although I have to add something. Prior to COVID, there were a lot of, quote unquote, personality tests out there.
Yeah.
So people weren't really ready for change. It wasn't until COVID that professionals really latched on, and this product got incredible traction. Because people were ready for innovation. Yeah. They were ready for something new. They were ready to learn more about themselves and see more of their options.
Yeah, that's such a good point. It seems like there was a time to give everybody like a pause button, is what kind of some weird secondary effect that happened during COVID. Is like, a lot of tragedy, a lot of stuff happened, but there were some other side effects that were like people took time to take a deep breath and be like, okay, am I doing the best that I can do with this business? Am I doing, and just gave people a new paradigm or a new like rule set to innovate, right?
Absolutely. Look, if you're talking about the dealership business, look at Pandemic of Positivity.
Yeah.
That literally came out of COVID.
Exactly. I mean, David Long is, you hear a lot of these guys that are, and you're a fellow clubhouseian.
Oh yeah.
And the dealership spaces that we're constantly in, and we know a lot of the same people. But you're absolutely right. That Pandemic of Positivity, Clubhouse has changed the way that I do business. It's
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And I think we each have a medium that we grasp onto like that, right? And that's why there are so many out there.
Yeah. And I grew as a human being, as a father, as a professional, as a husband, and through Clubhouse. It was really inspiring. I don't know. I'm so grateful that I was able to kind of connect with that environment.
Yes, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because I have literally watched you evolve in your role as CEO.
Thank you.
From where you started with the company, having, partners, and now, just running the company. And I watched as you just assumed that role and just stepped into that power, which was incredibly cool to witness.
Thank you very much. I can, I can thank you. I have a lot of thanks to give to you because of that process, because it was a checkpoint throughout this process that was really important for me to go through and connect and soundboard and do that. And, like I've said a lot, you are Wendy Rhodes, that performance coach that I can be like, am I crazy? What am I missing here? And you frame stuff for me in a way that I'm like, now I know what I got to do. And I'll go back and do it. And then we'll check in again and do that process. So it's like, I would, highly recommend, if you don't have somebody like you in their lives, in their professional lives, get one, or reach out to you to be able to do that, because it's like having a superpower,
Yeah.
And I think people really appreciate when the company gives them support and tools to be able to understand themselves,
100%. I just had this conversation with a woman yesterday with one of my corporate clients. And believe it or not, she was actually contemplating leaving the company. So, we looked at that. I didn't dive into that right away. We looked at that. We had some conversation around that. And then towards the end of the session, I said, I don't know if you're aware of this, but the company doesn't invest in everyone the way they're investing in you. Ooh. And she said, what? I said, they're paying my fee so that they can help you step into your next role here at the organization. They're investing in you.
Yeah. Man, that's a paradigm shift.
Right. And we're not talking $50 an hour. We're talking they're investing in you. And she said, I never looked at it that way, because she was feeling devalued. But like you said, it's a paradigm shift. All of a sudden, I put it in perspective that they are literally taking the time, taking the resources, investing it into her because they believe in her. They believe that she has more to give. They believe she can be a top performer. They believe she can dig a little deeper.
Man, it puts in perspective so many things. It's like us as managers sometimes don't have the vocabulary to be able to convey that information, right? And you could say, and it might not be the right right way that you relate to somebody, and for me it happens a lot. Like, we're a company that has a lot of technicians, and I come from a technical background, and I'm a little bit of a knuckle dragging idiot, when it comes to stuff.
I just got the visual.
Yeah, I'm just like, like, fix this, right? Fix that. And I that's my background, and I like to fix things, and I like to fix things with my hands.
Box checker and a fixer.
Box checker and a fixer. That's my MO, right? But throw in a little creativity in there, So that's my thing. And sometimes when I relate to people, I don't have the language to be able to do that. And even I've done a ton of work on that front. And even with that, sometimes I don't have the language because how I relate to that person is from that technical perspective. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
it's like I don't relate from a...
Right, you relate from the work perspective, but not from the emotional intelligence, social intelligence perspective. I can't begin to tell you how many clients over the years we have sat down and scripted conversations for them to have with a coworker, with a supervisor, with someone who they were managing. Yeah.
No, that's brilliant because it creates another framework and to have that conversation. And if you put that in context with their KBAT, you have that in context, like, well, their carrots and their sticks are X, Y, and Z. And then they, thrive on recognition, or they thrive on, being supported or being part of a team. You can really adjust your conversation to go and hit those points because, we lose so much money and so much time and investment and effort on these people that in most cases are incredible, but because they don't have that little click thing, they move on to another organization or, they have a conflict or they're creating a toxic environment. And, if you've already invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into somebody, not only in salary, but in effort and team and everything that you're doing, right? And even momentum. To lose that because of not having additional information of this assessment that can give
how
you...
to relate to them.
Yeah.
What's interesting about what you're talking about is that most of us tend to speak to our values, whether we know, like, let's say somebody's number one value is challenge, whether they know that or not. When they speak, when they go to enroll someone into some kind of vision, they're going to talk about the challenge. Isn't this going to be great? We're going to work towards this challenge. We're going to solve this. But what happens if somebody else's number one value is different? Maybe somebody else's number one value is contribution. So all they want to know is, well, he didn't really, or she didn't really, or they didn't really hit on the way that I'm going to be able to lend my expertise. So I don't know if this project is really for me, right? There are so many different ways to communicate, and maybe that wasn't the best example, but the point being that there are so many ways to communicate to a person that when you want to enroll them into a project, a vision, or a conversation, or something pertaining to emotional and social intelligence, it's good to know their values, not just yours. It's good to know theirs.
I think that was a perfect example because, we come into so many initiatives that, as executive leadership, whatever you want to say, whatever position you're in. And even if in your department, let's say you're in, the obscure department in the back and you want to implement something, knowing the common language or that subconscious gripping point that they have that you're like, why is this person so stubborn on doing this? It's like, well, you're not speaking their, lack of a better term, love language, of their work love language. You know what I mean? I don't know if that's the right term to say, but if you're saying, hey, this is going to be a great challenge and challenges my driving value.
Right.
And they're like, no, I want to be part of a team. It's like,
Exactly.
If I want to win,
that was a good point.
right?
Yes.
If I want to win as a leader, I'm going to be like, hey, man, what do you think as a valuable team member that we should do to make sure that this happens? Hey, do you see a problem, or like, have you noticed that this trend that's happening? And they're like, yeah, I've noticed that, but I didn't really want to say anything because they're going to probably do something. Like, hey, man, what if we just team up and do this? And you drop those things in, and suddenly you get buy-in from that team, and then you're off to the races.
That was a perfect example. Exactly. Because then that person, that team, they feel valued, they feel heard, they feel included, right?
I sometimes feel that sometimes in order to be right and to be loyal to their subconscious structure, value structure, that people will be, like that reluctant donkey that you're trying to pull, pull up the hill, and just not, just out of like sheer, what's that called? When you do something, it's like malicious compliance. Have you ever heard of that term, malicious compliance?
I mean, I've heard of each of those words, but I don't know that I've heard of it together.
Yeah,
Tell me.
so like malicious compliance is like, hey, we're going to do this initiative, and we're going to move all those boxes from here to over there. And they literally just move the boxes from here to over there. When you're giving them the bigger picture, and you're like, okay, we're organizing the office, and one of the tasks is to move the boxes from here to over there. And there's a shelving unit, right? And they literally put the boxes in front of the shelving unit and not organized in the shelving unit. That's malicious compliance, right? It's like they technically did what you asked them to do, but not in the context of the bigger picture, because I believe that they didn't have the substructure of value alignment.
Interesting.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, when you said that example, I was thinking, I call that belligerence.
yeah, of course.
I'm not, they're not asking why, or hey, do you need to get to the shelves behind it? It's just, okay, he wants us to do this, we're going to do this. That's it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and I think that's malicious. I think people almost don't get ownership of a process because there isn't real true buy-in. They say yes, but don't say yes here.
Right, they don't say yes in their heart?
They don't say yes in their heart, exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So if you speak to their values,
yes,
then you get full compliance.
Exactly. You get them on board. And they'll be like, you know what, John, we should do, actually, instead of doing it in a thing, we should label them from A to Z. And actually, there's stuff that is, that's a great idea. There's stuff that we use more than other things, so we could make that more accessible in this other cabinet. So that's like the quick access cabinet, and this is the long-term storage cabinet. And suddenly you have momentum.
Yeah.
And those small wins of momentum create highly effective teams.
Yeah. Yeah. Great example. That is when you're inspiring them to bring their own ideas to the table.
Yeah. Exactly. And the only way to do that is by resonating with their internal value structure.
With their values.
Yeah.
Perfect. We got it all solved.
Perfect. We just have to do that to everybody. Yeah,
right,
exactly.
In the world. Exactly.
Yeah, that's funny. So how, what themes have you seen in the, you probably done hundreds, not thousands of KBADs.
Oh yeah.
What are common themes that you see? Do you see like common personality profiles, or this is like the professor or the scientist and the coach and the thing? Like, do you see these like emergent themes that come on people?
Yeah, there are definitely themes. So, there's one where the person is that 100,000-foot view person, and they also have a competitive culture, and they also want to scale quickly, and or they want to scale and lead a team, and that I call the trifecta, right? I say everyone should have one of these, right? A person with this profile on their team.
Okay.
Right? Because this is a person who is in it for the long haul. They're going to get it done no matter what it takes. They make sure that it's quality, and then they build on that quality.
Oh, wow.
Right. And then you also have other individuals who are all about helping people. They're not really motivated through the sheer power or passion of doing something themselves. It's more about how can I help others? And if you show me the way that I can make an impact on another human being or advocate for that other human being, then I'm all about it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And I've done a couple other assessments that, the Myers-Briggs.
Yeah, there's DISC, Myers-Briggs. There's a lot of really
and
good
then the
ones.
DISC
There's
one.
the Harrison that breaks it down. Yeah,
There's a DISC assessment of like if you're a D, whatever that is, and then there's like the animal one is like, are you a lion? Are you a gazelle? Are you a rabbit? Or a turtle. There's a couple of, but like I think the one that I most resonate with is yours because it has all of it. It has many aspects of what that looks like.
Yeah.
Because it does also give you a company that you resonate with. Does tell you where you're on that journey. It tells you where, like, what kind of leader you are, where your conflicts are, carrots and sticks. It tells you really a full personality profile of what that individual can have. So, kind of with that said, what do you have? Does those assessments go into kind of a larger thing and talk about an organization? Like if you have an organization that have like too many conflicts like of people, or is there like a holistic systemic, KBAT?
I think that what you're asking is if I've used the KBAT within organizations to like make nice and have everybody play nice in the sandbox.
well, right? not as much as that. Well, that's a very good point. But I mean, like, have you used the KBAT to say there's a probability that's going to be a lot of conflict in this organization, or, the seasons as well? It's like there's too many, like.
Like there's too many chefs.
Yeah, like there's too many chefs, or there's too many. There's too many people in the middle management that are that don't, sync well together. It's like and it's like, oh, this place is like, man, this is a well-oiled machine because the people that are in the places have the personality profiles, and it's like making an effective team. Is that you get insight from an organization that way?
Yeah, that is definitely a thing.
Okay.
That is definitely a thing. So, for instance, recently I evaluated a company, and the executive and his right hand had absolutely perfectly complementary skill sets, where one was weak, the other was strong, and vice versa.
Okay.
And you could see where and how that played out in the success of their company.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was really, really cool.
That's super cool.
Yeah. And then there are times, yes, that we go in and there are, maybe a couple of people are a little charged with each other and they're not really getting along.
Yeah.
And we see that not only might they have values that are in conflict with each other, but there are also some other like deciding factors, right? And I'll give you an example. So I had this one organization. I was evaluating two people, and one person, it showed on the assessment how they went about, solving problems, finishing up a challenge, and moving on to the next project. And their counterpart was the type of person who liked to go back and check off the boxes again, even after the project was completed.
Okay.
And believe it or not, something so simple like that was causing conflict between the two of them. So there are so many different factors and different points and places on the profile that you can look at and see, okay, well, they're not going to align here. They're not going to align here. And there are also ways to sit down with those, same said people and show them how the other person thinks and why the other person acts that way.
Powerful. Yeah.
And it pretty much goes like this. They're not trying to be difficult. This is just
they're not trying to be an ass.
Right. I was trying to be nice. They're not trying to be difficult, but this is just their professional DNA.
Yeah.
This is just the way they think. It's just the way they're made. And once you illuminate that, it's not that the problem goes away 100%, but I got to tell you, it's like, 90% better.
Yeah, that's a huge win. If you deconflict an organization by...
I like that word, deconflict.
Yeah, deconflict an organization by 90%, that's a huge... And that's what momentum... I think conflict is a momentum killer. And I'm so interested in this concept of momentum.
Yeah, that dynamic.
Like, the art of war, right? It's like momentum is everything. It's like you start, it's so hard to start a business.
Oh God,
it's so hard. I have a graveyard of businesses that I've started in my past, right? Yeah. Just getting the fire lit, and then dealing with personalities and dealing with conflict and dealing with that. It's like you want to maximize your chances of the team members that you bring in, understand them.
Right.
It was hard enough to get them.
Yeah.
It was hard enough to bring them in. Might as well invest in them while they're here. It's like,
yeah.
No, go ahead.
I have a story. It's really sad. It's actually sad. So there was an organization that wanted to hire an individual, and we assessed the person. And there were so many red flags that came up on the profile. I said, you know what? This is going to be a very problematic individual. And like a year later, the person died by suicide.
Oh no.
Right. It was that problematic.
Oh.
It was that, and I would have had no idea about that. But it's just the impact of that, and the news was just devastational. Yeah. But there are things that you can see. I mean, you can't see everything with any one profile, but there are red flags. So I have organizations that come to me and say, we've narrowed it down to these two people. Can you help us figure out which would be the best choice for this role? Right? So, and it's not the answer. It's just part of a bigger picture, but it's one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Right? And I know that story was extreme. Yeah. It's just that it's one piece of the puzzle.
No, and I think it puts things into context of, as much as you can say a person can come into the system, come into the team and be, Michael Jordan, they can also come into the team and like create chaos and toxicity, and and that momentum goes both ways. Yeah. That moment, and thank you for bringing that up, because it does talk about that the momentum, if you do it in a negative way, can destroy a highly effective team by bringing somebody in that has conflict or has some internal value stuff or whatever that looks like, that is on a path that it's like, we're here to support our team members, but if we can avoid putting ourselves and amplifying their stuff too, because putting them not in the right environment is as bad as any other scenario. So I mean, I think that's an appropriate conversation to have as leaders.
Yeah, we really have to be careful when we're selecting whether we have chaos already in the organization or whether it's totally at peace. We need to be highly cognizant of who we add to that team, right? Especially, look, with the constellations, at the end of the day, many teams act like a family dynamic. Yeah. And we have to be careful who we bring into our family.
Yeah, of course. You
can relate to that, right, John?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. We on Clubhouse, on the rooms, we have this conversation on a regular basis. It's like, experience means both, right? Like, experience means both. It's the good stuff, but also all the crap, that you're bringing in.
Good point.
It's like some people, it's like, oh, I need somebody with experience. It's like, well, yeah, you're bringing in all the baggage and all the crap, and they have, and if they had an inappropriate relationship with an employee, if they had all the stuff, they may be a killer and they can close all the deals, but they got all the other stuff, and I think that's why understanding the team is so important.
Yeah, when you bring somebody in, you bring in innovation and the way they've always done things.
Yeah.
You bring in both sides of the coin.
Exactly. I mean, when I was in the military, there was this phenomena that would happen a lot. They would say, well, at my last base, at the last place that they were, they would always go back to this. It's like, we always did it this way at my last base. Yeah. And it's like, no, you're part of the new system now. And that assimilation rate is really important to be, and in the dealership space, there's a lot of turnover. It's about 10%, 20% on a regular basis. It happens a lot. There's a lot of turnover. And you're constantly bringing in new people into the organization. And I think that if you were, I don't know of a more effective way of spending your dollars than to understand your team and to use this as a process of onboarding and be like, are you a good fit? And are you not a good fit? Are you going to be toxic to the team? Because it's opening a door that I think a lot of people know is closed, or a lot of people believe it's closed, because you could find the best, coolest general managers doing this stuff, and then they're they're the bee's knees for the first 6 months, and then suddenly the bottom falls out, and you find out that they have, they're wanted in a couple states, and it's a big issue, and that happens. That is not something that is rare in the industry,
So first of all, thank you for your service to our country.
Oh, I didn't shoot at anybody. I didn't get shot at. I was a mechanic. I had a lot of fun. Yes, but I mean, I don't want to minimize it, but there's heroes. There's real heroes out there, and I'm not one of them.
Second of all, I was going to ask you a question about what you just said. What do you attribute that 10% turnover rate to in the industry?
Man, I think it's about incentives. I think it's about incentives. This is going to sound really bad coming from me, but I'm going to say it anyways because I think it's important to have this conversation, is that if you pay somebody based on the bottom line, you're going to get bottom line results. That at whatever it takes, you're going to make that happen. At sometimes the sacrifice of everything else, right?
Okay.
So I think the pay structure for executive team members, in many capacities, it's like they get 10% of the bottom line, So what does that incentivize? In good capacities, it incentivizes growth, right? Like the good way is like growth and really maximizing gross profit or maximizing net profit for the organization and really creating those incentives for that. But on the other end, it's cutting costs. Every month, the chalkboard gets erased, and you're starting from zero. And I think it doesn't set up the incentives for long-term sustainable growth for the organization. So because your pay is not based on, training penetration, process improvement, development, customer or employee development, and like really building the long-term pace of the organization. It's like this general manager didn't work, axe them, bring another one in that says that they can do better, right? And so I think that's why that happens in the business, and also in many capacities, the business is so successful that it doesn't need it.
I think this is a fascinating conversation because with the KBAT, it actually helps to create top performers.
Yep.
And that's what, if you want that bottom line to increase and to get paid more. And I understand your point about maybe not basing it off of the bottom line. However, as the bottom line increases, like a rising tide,
rises all ships. Yeah.
But I think that top performers in an organization make a huge difference.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, our organization, we're all salary, right? Most dealerships are commission based.
Yeah.
And so that creates a certain environment.
Yeah. You have an incredible culture at VTech.
Thank you. It's mainly thanks to you.
I'm going no. I'm going to tend to disagree with that, and I'll tell you why and how I know.
Okay.
So when we did the culture survey, one of the questions was, do you feel like you have someone who cares about you at the organization? And another one was, do you have a mentor at VTech? And across the board, everyone said yes.
Well, that's powerful.
And they, either named you or, they named your other partner, right? Yeah. It was really amazing. Yeah. It was incredible.
That's very humbling to hear. So,
yeah.
Thank you.
It was really nice to hear.
Giving a shit is very powerful.
Yes. Well put.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. It's when people know how much you care, that's it.
Yeah.
They know. They know across the board.
And caring also with
expecting more of them as well. Like I don't know if it's, I hate to put it in this terms, but it's like, I know that you can do better, and I know that we can do better.
Potential.
Yeah, that, like, seeing the potential.
Yeah, and maximizing it.
And maximizing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because just caring is, this, can be seen as oh, they just care, it's like this kind of software is just like, no. Caring is to say, you're messing up.
Yeah.
And I know you can do better.
Yeah.
And I've seen you do better, and I'm going to hold you accountable to be able to do better.
Yeah. And it may not even be you're messing up. It may be you're doing so great in this area, we're going to expand you into that area and help you grow that incredible management potential that you have.
And I think the KBAT does that to say, is this person a potential candidate to be able to take on more responsibilities? And what is it, the Peter Principle? Are you familiar with the Peter Principle?
Yes.
Like, people get promoted to their highest level of incompetence. It's something like that,
Something like that.
Yeah,
I'm
it's like,
to remember the.
You're good at something, and you're like, I'm a great mechanic.
Oh,
and then,
Yes. You know what? I'm so glad you brought this up. So glad, because this is what we deal with constantly.
Yeah.
So someone is good at their job, and then they get promoted to management without having the management skills of holding other people accountable, delegating, making sure that everybody is using their, rising to their highest skill level and using their time wisely.
Yeah.
Right? So people get promoted, but they're not necessarily, and that is a lot of the work that we do.
Yeah.
Coming in and helping middle managers to be just that, excellent middle managers.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, you see it all the time. You see a great employee gets promoted, and then they're terrible. And then they leave the organization with all of that institutional knowledge.
Right.
You have a brain drain that happens, like, out of just not having the right information
or the right
tools, like the KBAT, right? And I keep pitching it because I think it's an incredible process. But on a regular basis, you said, "Oh, you're a great employee. You're doing stuff you show all the time," and then you're like, "Man, it's a risky move. I'm going to promote him to manager," and 80% of the time it fails.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and we think that that's the standard, and there's an additional door that needs to be opened and conversation to be had. They can say, okay, maybe the person does need more money. They're an incredible employee. You don't want to lose them. Create a pay structure that just gives them more money, or what that looks like, and that's in alignment with goals and departmental goals and doing stuff without making them a manager, because you might get somebody from Best Buy or Target or, from outside of the industry. You can bring them in as a manager, and suddenly they're great because they fill out the needs of the team.
Yeah. And when it comes to management, it's really important to have people who are good connectors. So I don't have to think the way you think, but I have to have empathy and compassion for the way you think. And I think that is that's one of the most important things, right? And again, I don't have to agree with you, but I can have a conversation with you and then figure out, right, with a little ingenuity, how to help you reframe the way you're looking at a situation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's very important. So it's about connecting with the person first, and then using that tool of reframing or whatever tool is in their arsenal to use.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's powerful, because we come into, I was listening to somebody on either Instagram. It's like, I follow a lot of the entrepreneurs on Instagram.
Yeah.
It's like, are you going into a conversation with your preconceived notions in order to be right about this person?
Yes.
And won't even hear the new information. And I'm like, the narrative that we've already created around this person is that they're XYZ, good or bad, right? And if it's outside of that XYZ formula, you don't even receive the information, because your preconceived filter of, just because of operational saturation is like, oh, they're being stupid about this. I'm not going to listen to it. I'm going to completely dismiss it. And there's valuable information there.
This reminds me of what you brought up earlier, when you said institutional knowledge, which is also the historical knowledge, where like even as a coach coming in, I had 2 situations just, in the past week where there was a conflict between 2 people and it looked one way from the surface.
Mm-hmm.
However, bringing in that historical knowledge, that institutional knowledge, completely reframed the situation.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times we need to go that level deeper because we as human beings, we like to put things in buckets.
Yeah.
We like to put things in nice little buckets. Oh, I've seen this before. This falls into ABC bucket.
Yeah.
No. There's a backstory and a whole lot of information which actually make this situation fall into XYZ bucket, which is a whole different bucket.
Yeah. And I'm a fan of helping people process buckets. Because, meeting people where they are at the time is very different than where they are in the future. It's like, it's like relationships, right? It's like if I can't water under the bridge most of my relationship, I'd be divorced by now, right?
Yeah, of course.
And my wife's an incredible human being.
Yeah.
We have an incredible relationship, but, there's been, and if I'm harboring that stuff and just putting it on the, I'm going to use this for later board.
Right.
And I'm going to weaponize it to, bash you over the head with it whenever we have the next conflict, or we're going to take that, crappy momentum into whatever new dynamic we're going to have and not be able to water under the bridge this thing. It's going to be set up for failure.
That was such a great analogy because it's all about being able to process our emotions and then communicate our emotions.
Yes. Yeah.
It's the difference between just blurting something out in the moment versus taking a pause for the cause. Breathing through it, thinking through it, and then revisiting the conversation peacefully, calmly. And sometimes that could be difficult to do during a hectic work day that's very demanding and you're rushing around and phones and customers and support and tickets and problems and all that.
Yeah.
However, it's that pause button. Hitting the pause button is so important.
And one thing that I started doing with everybody, and I tried to do this in my life, is like have the crappy conversation afterwards. Don't shy away from having that conversation because that's where the relationship is really built, is in the, hey, you got a minute? And then when you said this, it came across as this. And it's not emotional, right? It's just like, it comes across as this. And I know you're not trying to do that, right? I know we're trying to just communicate and have a conversation and exchange information. But when you do this in this way, this is how it makes, and I know it sounds super corny, but that's how it makes me feel, right? It's like, it can come across as this. And I know it's not your intention to do that. Like it's illogical for you to be, unless you're going around weaponizing and hurting people, you can have that conversation and be like, have that crappy conversation afterwards.
I feel like a proud mama right now because you and I have had that conversation. That was so perfect.
Yeah.
The way you just outlined it, that was just so amazing.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't know the framework to have a conversation like that.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
they suck.
Perfect.
They suck. And for people that avoid conflict, for people they're crappy conversation. Be like, hey, that came off as this, and you're like, I know it wasn't your intention. I know it wasn't this, but this is how it came across. And I'll look at my stuff to figure out why I took it that way and why I was, whether you want to call it triggered or activated or whatever you want to think. Like, there's probably something I have to look at here, but when you say something of that nature, it comes off as this way, and it's like, let's fix it. And they're probably like, man, I'm sorry, I didn't know that was the case.
Yeah.
And you fix it, water under the bridge and move on.
This is making me think of something, so I'm going to share something a little personal that most people don't know about me, which is that recently I started taking Latin and ballroom dance classes, and that it started in January. And what I noticed is that, a lot of people have their own style and their own way. You know, one person will tell you, no, grip like this,
Okay.
you know, with your hands. And then another person will say, no, do this type of grip. So everybody has their own way. But I noticed that when I dance, a lot of men will say to me, you know, can I give you some feedback? Or maybe they'll just say, hey, this is what you want to do. But then they'll apologize afterwards. I'm like, why are you apologizing? Like, you know, I'm sorry, I don't want to like offend you. I'm like, I am all about constructive criticism. And I think that when constructive criticism is delivered kindly and nicely because somebody genuinely wants to see me grow or to see a person grow, that should be warmly accepted with open arms. And that goes back to emotional and social intelligence, right? Are we able to process the way somebody is delivering information to us? Are we able to say, hey, are they trying to be mean? Are they trying to be mean about this? Or are they wanting to see me grow? See, there's a whole thought process behind it that we have to ask ourselves. So on the dance floor, I say to myself, you know, this is a person who wants to see me dance even better.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to learn this. And if we each go into, whether it's a hobby or with our family or with our work, if we each go into a situation embracing the learning, right? Having an open mind. I think that's called a growth mindset as opposed to a fixed mindset, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right, like Carol Dweck,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, that is it's like have a learner mindset, you know, that you're constantly, you know, and I do some volunteer work in Miami. It's like grown is not a word that's allowed in those circles. It's like, man, I'm grown. He's like, no,
you're not grown.
We're growing.
Right.
Always growing. And I think that
Wonderful.
growth mindset is such a powerful place to be. It's like, I haven't arrived yet. Nobody's arrived.
Yeah.
We're constantly learning. We're constantly growing. We're constantly becoming better versions of ourselves. And growth hurts sometimes. You know?
It's not always comfortable. It could be painful.
But also have the challenge and have the courage to demand that people become what you see in them. I think that's what real love is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, I know you can do better.
Yeah.
I know you can become the best version of who you are.
Yeah.
And I want to help you do that.
Yeah.
Because if you do that, I can see myself doing that as well. It's like to really become, you know, to become complete and to become the best version of you. And, you know, I talk about this with people in the company a lot. It's like, I want your journey to be here to be the most, you know, the most fulfilling journey that it can happen.
Yeah.
That's 6 months, if that's 10 years, if that's 20 years, that while we were in each other's orbit, we made each other better.
Yeah, and I've heard you say that. Like, it gives me chills every time I hear you say it.
Thank you.
I think it's such a powerful concept because a lot of employers want their people to just stay exactly where they are, right in that spot. It's so important, though, to help them grow.
It's about exchange.
Yeah.
It's based on the principle of exchange. You know, it's like, I don't want you to, unless that's what you want to do. You know, there's some people who's like, no, I just want to do this. I want to do my job. And they have other things. And I'm like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
But as long as that's an exchange and balance, I'm good with it. And if you're okay with that and we're, you know, exchanging that, I'm okay with that. But I really, truly mean that. I want your journey to be here to be a beautiful journey. Like that, to be like, man, I'm so glad that they were in my life and I was in their life, you know?
Yeah, it's impactful. I think that's a beautiful sentiment.
Yeah.
Very impactful.
Yeah.
You want every interaction to be purposeful.
Yeah.
Like you said, if they're there for 6 months, a year, 10 years, you want it to be purposeful.
And I want, like, also that anybody that was part of our company and that we're still friends, you know, that we still connect and we still, you know,
100%.
like I have former business partners that we bought out that, you know, we went to San Francisco together, him and his wife and me and my wife, and we had a blast.
Yeah.
You know, just such a good time, you know, catching up and talking. And it's just like this, it really is beautiful, you know, like it really is like cherished relationships that you have in this industry, and especially in the car business. It's infinitesimal. It is, everybody knows each other.
Yeah.
And there's incredibly inspiring stories out of this. There's incredibly inspiring
people that are in this industry that it's, I talk about this industry being an industry of second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth chances, that people that were incarcerated, people that were, suffering from addiction. There was people that have been in all sorts of life scenarios and now are some of those inspiring people that you could ever be around,
It's amazing.
It's really incredible. Yeah. And what more than to give them a tool to promote that and understand their teams better.
That is amazing. Yeah. It's just it's all about relationships.
Yeah.
It's all about relationships, and it's kind of like when you go through a breakup and having that emotional intelligence and that balance to be able to process what went right in the relationship, what went wrong. And then if the person is not a malicious person to you, to basically have the wherewithal to still be somewhat friends with that person as long as it wasn't like any type of really bad, hurtful situation, right?
And it can be from a distance.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like it can be from a distance.
Yeah.
It can be well-wishing from a distance. Like this person, because of whatever conflict, whatever the things, be like, I just, wish you well.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. It could be well wishes and it could be, like it didn't work out for us in business, but we're still friends.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and through this process that happens as well. There's people that you lose along the way, and that's okay. That's to be expected, right?
Yeah.
But I think as long as you internally don't entangle with whatever that is, and can let go of those things, it's a growing process. I've certainly gone through that. Like I've certainly gone through that process of letting people go that it's like that's the best part for them. And I think that's what I think is the best. Like I don't want to rob them of an opportunity of growth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So Tracy, if the incredible world that we live in of dealers and dealerships want to get a hold of you, how would they do that?
They can contact me. They can email me at tracykawa.com. So there's no E, there's no I.
Okay, all right.
TRACY at TRACYKAWA.com. Or they can call me 561-239-0322. They can find me on LinkedIn. I'm relatively active on LinkedIn. Yeah.
And also on Clubhouse.
And Clubhouse. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And if anybody's out there looking to better understand their teams or to just simply, if you're between two candidates, to understand which one you should go with and it's going to be the right fit for the organization and minimize risk, reach out to Tracy.
Yeah. Or if you want to create high performers, top performers, you want to help your people reach their potential. If you want to help your people understand each other's values, to enroll each other into a vision or a project. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity to have this amazing conversation, John.
Thank you for coming. And I hope we can do it soon again.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you.